When the energy price cap rose in 2022, the now Secretary of State called it a national emergency. He called for an urgent freeze on energy bills. He called it a lack of leadership. Now in government, the only thing he's able to freeze is vulnerable pensioners by taking away their winter fuel allowance with no notice.
That we're going to do things differently. We're going to tell the truth, even when they are hard truths.
Ladies and gentlemen, today we confront a stark reality. The United Kingdom is grappling with an escalating energy crisis that threatens the very fabric of our society. Despite promises of relief, households are facing unprecedented energy bills, businesses are teetering on the brink due to soaring operational costs, and our most vulnerable citizens are being pushed deeper into poverty. This crisis is not a mere consequence of global events. It is a manifestation of policy decisions made within these very halls. In the lead-up to the last general election, the Labour Party pledged to reduce household energy bills by £300 by 2030. This promise offered hope to millions struggling with the cost of living. However, recent developments have starkly contradicted this commitment. The energy price cap is set to rise for the third consecutive quarter, with average annual bills increasing to £1,849 from April 1, 2025. This marks a significant surge from pre-pandemic levels, where the average bill stood at approximately £1,100. The public's patience is wearing thin as they grapple with these mounting costs. Central to the government's strategy is the ambitious net zero by 2050 target. While the pursuit of a sustainable future is commendable, the implementation of this initiative has raised serious concerns. The Institute for Fiscal Studies projects that environmental levies will increase to over £14 billion by 2029, translating to an additional £120 per household over 5 years. These levies, intended to fund the transition to renewable energy, are contributing to the financial strain on consumers. Moreover, the Climate Change Committee has advised that a third of the necessary emissions reductions by 2040 must come from consumer actions, including changes to home heating systems and air travel habits. This places a substantial burden on individuals, many of whom are already struggling to make ends meet. Let's hear what MP Andrew Bowie has to say.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I thank the Minister for advance sight of her statement. Today, the Government has announced an expansion of the Warm Homes discount, a change to the criteria which will see more low-income households receive a £150 payment to heat their homes. But for many, this payment will be immediately eaten up by the increase in the energy price cap. We must be clear. The best protection for vulnerable households is to prioritise cheap energy. The announcement today is, frankly, a sticking plaster approach to rising energy bills. This government fails to grasp the core issue. Our energy costs in this country are far too high for businesses, for industry and, of course, for bill payers. When the energy price cap rose in 2022, the now Secretary of State called it a national emergency. He called for an urgent freeze on energy bills. He called it a lack of leadership. Now in government, the only thing he's able to freeze is vulnerable pensioners by taking away their winter fuel allowance with no notice. Does she think this shows leadership? I know that my constituents, and presumably hers too, will be concerned about their bills rising, concerned about inflation creeping back up, hitting 3% in January, despite the hard work done last year to bring it under control, and angry that Labour's promise to cut bills by £300 is being broken. But the worst part of all this, Mr. Speaker, is that this government, led by ideological zealotry from the Secretary of State, is doubling down. Their obsession with going further and faster than any country in the world to meet their own self-imposed 2030 target is going to increase people's bills even further. The renewables industry has warned that their rush to build record renewables in the next 5 years will push up prices and I quote, consumers will lose out. The government's rush to build twice as much grid in the next 5 years as has been built in the last decade will increase the network costs on people's bills. And the OBR has said that the environmental levies will increase to £14 billion in 2030, largely driven by the hidden cost of renewables, all of which will end up on people's energy bills. The Labour Party were not honest about their promise to cut bills by £300 during the election. They were not honest about their plan to take the winter fuel payment away from millions of pensioners living in poverty. And now they are not being honest with the British people about what their plans will do to our energy bills. If there is anything we have learnt over the last few years, it's that the cost of energy is absolutely critical to any modern economy. We cannot go on following ideology over evidence and putting political targets ahead of what will cut the cost of energy in this country. But this government is in denial. That's why they scrapped the fuel system cost analysis commissioned when we were in office. I have to ask the Minister, when will proposals for a debt relief scheme be published? Can she confirm how much she expects levies to increase over the next 5 years? Will she commission a fuel systems cost analysis of what the 2030 target will do to people's energy bills? And will she confirm how much bills will rise by before we see the £300 off what we were all promised?
Minister. And it's special question if Madam Deputy Speaker not permitted to speak,
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The honourable member is right that energy prices are too high. On that we agree. And we also agree that that is worrying for families and businesses across the country. But what I would point out to him is that 80% of the rise that we have seen this time has been driven by wholesale prices. And I would gently remind him that the reason why we are in this position, the reason why we are so exposed to global fossil fuel prices that we have no control over, is because his party spent 14 years in government squandering the opportunity to accelerate the transition to clean power, squandering the opportunity to reduce our dependence on global fossil fuel prices, and leaving families across the country exposed. The status quo is not tenable. We are at the point where energy prices are at a historic high under his government. Now, that is a status quo that we are not willing to contend with. And that is the very reason, not because of ideology, but because we see the obvious. As long as we are dependent on global fossil fuel prices, we will be on this roller coaster. And that is the thing that is driving the push to clean power. The party opposite has no alternatives. We have a clear alternative. We run to clean power, but whilst we do that, we provide support to the most vulnerable households in the short term. The debt support scheme, to answer his question, Ofgem are in the process of consulting on that debt support scheme as we speak, and we will support them to put that in place because we know that the debt burden has increased by 3.8 billion, and we think that there is over 1.8 million households that will help and be supported by that. And we are absolutely committed to cutting bills. Everything we are doing as a government is driven by that desire and that clear commitment to cut bills down. We will do that in terms of short-term measures, but critically, we will do that by running at clean power by 2030. We have a plan to deal with energy bills. The party opposite has a plan to slow down, do nothing, and it will be the British public that pay the price.
The repercussions of current energy policies extend beyond households to the very backbone of our economy, our industries. The UK's industrial electricity prices are among the highest in the developed world, rendering energy-intensive sectors like steel and chemicals uncompetitive. This has led to a decline in manufacturing output and a loss of jobs, further exacerbating economic disparities. Prominent figures have voiced concerns over the current trajectory. Brian Gilvary, chairman of Ineos Energy, has criticised the net zero initiative, suggesting it could lead to inflation and power grid issues. He advocates for a balanced and comprehensive energy strategy, similar to approaches adopted by the US and China.
Additionally, the political consensus on climate policy is showing signs of fracture. The Conservative Party's leadership has expressed scepticism towards the net zero target, highlighting the need for a pragmatic approach that balances environmental goals with economic realities.
At the heart of this crisis lies a profound human cost. Cuts to winter fuel payments are projected to leave 50,000 pensioners living in poverty by 2025. This is not merely a statistic. It represents thousands of elderly individuals facing the harrowing choice between heating their homes and other essential needs. The case of Peter and Florence Fanning, pensioners from Coatbridge, underscores this plight. They are suing the government over cuts to the winter fuel payment, highlighting the severe hardship faced by many pensioners. Their legal action draws attention to the broader issue of fuel poverty amidst rising energy prices. The current state of affairs demands immediate and decisive action. It is imperative that we reassess our energy policies to ensure they are equitable, sustainable, and economically sound. This includes 1. Implementing transparent and fair energy pricing, ensuring that environmental levies and other charges do not disproportionately impact low-income households. 2. Investing in diverse energy sources, balancing renewable energy development with reliable baseload power to prevent supply shortages and price volatility. 3. Supporting vulnerable populations, reinstating and enhancing support mechanisms like the winter fuel payments to protect our most vulnerable citizens from fuel poverty. 4. Engaging in open dialogue, facilitating discussions between policymakers, industry leaders, and the public to create energy strategies that reflect the needs and realities of all stakeholders. Do you think Labour is failing the British people? Have your bills gone up? Have you or someone you know been affected by these disastrous policies? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Share this video. The more people who speak up, the harder it is for them to ignore us. The fight for accountability starts now. Let's make sure they hear us loud and clear.